Well, hello there, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Hybrid Ministry Show. I am your host, Nick Clayson, and in this episode, we are going to inspect the brand new YouTube Trends report that they just dropped, or maybe they didn't just drop it, but I just became aware of it, and so I recently came across it, discovered it, ingested it, and I want to go over it with you, as well as chat through and maybe brainstorm a few different implications that it could have for your church and your ministry, and make sure that you hang around all the way to the end, because there is where I'm really going to get kind of stream of consciousness, nitty gritty, and say, here's what this said, but here's what this might mean. Excited to have you with us on this episode of the Hybrid Ministry Show. Well, hey everyone, like I said, we're going to dive into the YouTube Trends report. If you have not seen that, feel free to hop into the description or the show notes wherever you are. Welcome to everybody listening. Welcome also to everybody potentially watching on YouTube. This is our second video that I've recorded, unless I put these in out of order, in which case this might be the first video that you're seeing. Either way, nonetheless, we're going to beta test this for a little while and see just how much extra work it is for me to do, but hopefully it's not, and hopefully it's a way that we can just continue to serve you in different ways. So we are on video. Make sure wherever you're listening, you hop into the show notes and you go subscribe to our podcast. If you're on YouTube, go subscribe to our YouTube if you're on our podcast. In addition to that, we are going to continue to post short clips both on my TikTok, link in the show notes, as well as on YouTube Shorts over there as well. So jump on there, hang out. We're going to have some fun with it. And in this episode, you're going to see why that is actually important for building an audience. Not that I'm like doing it to build an audience with y'all, but something that's something that is has an implication, I personally think, for you in your church moving forward. So check those things out. Also, every single episode lives at hybridministry.xyz, and I just want to let you know, if you've ever had trouble getting there, I finally got it fully fixed, fully propagated. You know, we've only been a show for like 6 months or so. There's no reason why I can't have figured out all the website stuff until recently, but I did, because that is nowhere near my forte, but I slugged through it, got it figured out. Been on countless emails and chats with Google domains and the blog, or the podcast hosts that we have. Check those out. So anyway, and at every single episode, we pay for a transcript that's completely 100% free to you. So if you hear something while you're on your run or cooking and you're not able to like jot it down, just know you can head to hybridministry.xyz/ whatever the episode number is, like 032 for this one, hybridministry.xyz/ 032, and you'll be able to download the complete transcript and just see literally every single word that was uttered while you're listening or watching. So again, welcome, excited to have you. So let's dive into this digital trends report. So YouTube digital trends report, like I said, link is in the show notes. Go grab your own copy of it so that you can look at it. But I'm going to go through the summary of it. I'm not going to hit every single detail, but I do want to let you know I am going to hit a vast majority, a high percentage of this trends report. So here's how YouTube started the document. It's just like a PDF document. It's graphically well designed. It looks amazing. And so here's what it says. It said in the 2000s and 2010s, digital culture was largely defined by viral video experiences. So we're in this Hybrid Ministry podcast. We're talking a lot about digital spaces, digital trends, maybe not trends, but like digital expressions of church ministry and digital expressions of church communication and all these types of things, right? So this is very much in the lane with which this podcast focused on. So digital trends were largely defined by viral video experiences. They didn't explicitly say this, but they had screenshots of certain videos. Like they had the What Does the Fox Say video. Do you guys remember that? We recently introduced our children to it, who are 6 and 4, and they think it's hilarious. But like if I made that reference now as a youth pastor, no one would get it. That is not anything that is in the like zeitgeist of any of our students anymore. They have no reference for that unless their parents were like how we are and introduced, their kids to it. The other video that they had a screenshot for was the Friday video by Rebecca Black. I don't know if you guys remember that one, but it almost went viral, and I feel bad for this girl because it went viral because it was just so not good and people thought it was hilarious. And so both of those were examples of viral video experiences that the whole world was sort of like privy to and talking about and aware of. And, it was like this idea of water cooler talk. Check this out. It actually talks about this idea of water cooler in this, trend report. So I may get to it, but like that was like, hey, we all saw this. Did you see that Rebecca Black video? Oh yeah. Like, right. Everyone saw it. That was how digital culture was defined by. Now, check this out. Fascinating. If you're a church leader, regardless of if you're a church leader focused on hybrid, digital, whatever, check this out. This is going to be game changing. Now pop culture is all about you. We still have viral videos, but single videos are comparatively less likely to achieve broad culture breakthrough. Let's dive into what that really means. What are driving these trends? This report said that 85% of Generation Z have posted video content online. All right. Furthermore, pop culture formation goes like this. They have this formula where they say the evolution of pop culture equals pop culture plus the depth of experience. Okay. The evolution of pop culture equals pop culture plus the depth of the experience of that thing. 65% of Generation Z agree that content that is personally relevant to them is more important than the content that lots of other people talk about. This is what I was saying about earlier, right? So many of the things that you and I may view as big breakthroughs or trending phenomena are experienced deeply and personally, and then therefore they're more complex than they look. It's saying that basically they're avoiding the water cooler talk, because water cooler talk is something that is like common for everybody, but instead Generation Z is more inclined to gravitate towards what's more personally relevant to them, even than what's less connected with the perceived overall cultural zeitgeist. 55% of Generation Z agree that they watch content that no one they know personally is actually interested in. Guys, this is absolutely like earth-shattering stuff, because like I think church leaders in general, and I want to be careful because I fully affirm and fully believe that the Bible is God's 100% truth, that it is completely without error. It is inerrant. It is authoritative. It is our guideline and baseline for life. But I think a lot of pastors, preachers, teachers take the approach of this is relevant because it's relevant, as opposed to realizing that the trends of culture that Generation Z is shifting beneath our very feet. And the culture that you and I grew up in with the What Does the Fox Say and the Rebecca Black viral video trends, that doesn't exist anymore. So to just say, the Bible says this and it's important to you because we all, or like, the masses support it, that doesn't really hold or carry a lot of weight anymore. It just doesn't. We have to figure out how to make it personal to them. And you may like inside have an immediate knee jerk about that and saying like, well, it's not just about them. That's very selfish behavior. And they need to learn how to become supportive of the overall mission. And, Jesus calls us to die to ourselves. And all of those things are true. However, if you're reaching a native Generation Z student, those things aren't baked into the culture and the world that they live in and that they filter their lens through and that they agree to and adopt as fact and truth. And so, therefore, we have to first go there and relate to them personally where it matters, and then bring them along in some of those other truths that we know to be true. Die to yourself. The Bible is completely authoritative, but we have to help show them why that matters to them. And I think that's always been the mission of the church, but I think sometimes as culture changes and shifts, pastors, especially, I hate to say it, but sometimes the older they get, or at least maybe the more dogmatic or narrow-minded they get in their thinking, they dig their heels in. They say, the Bible is God's inerrant truth, and it's relevant for all kinds, for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness, no matter what. And I fully affirm, support, and believe that. However, we have to help illuminate that and show that to Generation Z and the people that we're ministering to. And pastor, this is not just the youth pastor's problem anymore. All right, Generation Z, by the year 2025, is going to be the biggest generation that we have ever... No. Let me back that up. By 2025, Millennials and Generation Z are going to be the largest demographic of people in the workforce. All right, so Xers, Boomers are starting to retire and phase out, where Millennials and Gen Z are now the primary and overwhelming majority of people in the workforce. So the Generation Z, this trend that we're seeing isn't just teenagers anymore. Like Generation Alpha is our new youth ministry. Generation Alpha is 5th, 6th grade right now, 2023. And so Generation Z is 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, and up. Graduates, college, soon to be entering in the adult force of your church. This is relevant and matters immediately and now. Okay, so let's talk about the 3 distinct forms that YouTube saw these digital trends take. So the first one is this: creating community creativity. They said that there is communities now around everything. And I personally believe that this one alone bodes really well for the church. 61% of Generation Z agree that they would describe themselves as a really big or super fan of something, okay? Fandom is one of the most powerful forms of community that we see in our world today. Fan communities used to be a side effect of a certain piece or type of entertainment, but now they are central almost to the entertainment experience. So what that means is we now have quote-unquote professional fans. Here's what they said, quote directly from the report: communities of creators and engaged viewers are also now looking through the lens through which we make sense of pop culture itself. All right, what they're saying is that a thing may happen, and listen, I'm a victim of this because I'm a huge super fan of not only my favorite basketball team, but the reason that NBA basketball and the Oklahoma City Thunder are my favorite sport to follow is because I have found the best podcasts supporting Oklahoma City. All right. And so when something happens on the court or in a trade or whatever, I immediately go to hear the fan reaction, right? Like the professional fans input. And that is just as much a part of my experience of consuming information about the NBA, or more specifically about my favorite team, the Oklahoma City Thunder, than it is me actually watching the broadcast on TV. Same is true of, I'm a big Marvel fan. So a movie comes out and I watch it and it's good, but then I almost immediately go download the podcast, Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast, to hear their interpretation of it. I remember when the show WandaVision came out, in the first couple episodes, first of all, WandaVision, amazing. If you haven't seen it, if you're into Marvel, you have to go check it out. It is so good. It is the most next level series they have ever done. They had so much time because of the pandemic. I don't know that it'll ever be topped. Honestly, it was so stinking good. But I remember episode 1, which was like the 50s version of the TV show, and then episode 2, which was the 60s version. Both those episodes almost barely broke any character. It was like just watching like the Dick Van Dyke Show, except with Wanda and Vision. And I was like, what is going on here? And like it was fine as a show, but what was better was then I went out on a run and I listened to the podcast, and they're like speculating, and they're like, oh, and what about this? And maybe that means this and this means that. And I was like, I ate it up. That is what we're talking about here. And I think the church has an amazing opportunity to lean into that because, like we said earlier, we have the most relevant message, the most relevant story of all time. The Bible and the gospel do not have to be boring. They're amazing truths that we can and should lean into. And we have the ability to create super fans. And we don't want to create like a Pied Piper type youth ministry, but a little bit your pastor or your youth pastors or whatever, they can be like characters on your social media. They can give interpretation to cultural events. Like what if when Russia invaded the Ukraine, what if we sat down and had a podcast between two of the pastors on your staff that were interpreting that through the lens of Scripture? Like, I think that people would immediately tune into that. Like, what if you treated that like the NBA treats a big trade, and you do an emergency pod? You release it outside of your regular rhythm. See, all that does is that causes you and your brain to think hybrid instead of thinking through the lens of Sunday, and then somewhere in my week I'm going to release a podcast or something else or whatever. Or our only podcast is the Sunday sermon. So it releases Monday morning or Monday afternoon whenever the admin gets around to it. See, the best podcasts are the ones that have a regular release schedule. Like the one I'm talking about that I listen to for basketball, I know that it will release sometime on Monday, sometime on Wednesday, sometime on Friday without fail. And if it doesn't release, I get worried. I'm like, man, is someone sick? Like, is something happened? Like, what's going on here, right? Like, those are the ones that I can rely on. And you have to also know that when you start something like that, it's going to take time to build that audience, that fandom up. But churches, we already have an audience base. Like we're like for me to just kind of venture out on my own and start, like, I have to build up and drum up my own audience completely from scratch with absolutely zero people that even know about me, care about me, and want to follow me. But most churches are at least starting with a base of 50, 60, 100, 200, 500, 1,000 people. Like you have such a leg up on just general random content creators. Like, believe it or not, you have a leg up on Mr. Beast, who is got one of the biggest followings on YouTube. Not anymore, but when he started, you did. And the question I just always think is, like, what have we as a church done with it? And we've said, well, our social is make sure you come Sunday, make sure you come Sunday, make sure you come Sunday. And I just think that there's such an opportunity here. And I don't want to blur lines and get too close to the world and become too worldly and make this be about us looking like influencers instead of pastors. I get all that. I do. But I do think that there are some things that we can look at, especially knowing what the trends are and the way that Generation Z chooses and opts into interacting with pop culture, and borrow from some of those things and do that as a way to sprinkle in and help grow people in the discipline of growing closer to God and to Jesus. The second form, YouTube's trends report called it multi-format creativity. What does that mean? Memes. Like, really, that's what that means. It means memes. And more like specifically, not just like picture memes, though those count, and I think they're hilarious. Memes are like also like things we see on TikTok or YouTube Shorts or Reels, whatever, trends. All right, but here's the thing. TikTok may not be your place, and you may not be a fan of it even, but that's where they all start. They just do. And so I always make a joke because I'm more on TikTok and my wife's more on like Instagram Reels, and so I'll like make a reference about a song or a trending song or something, and I'll be like, oh wait, do you know that yet? Has it made its way over to Instagram Reels? Because whatever is trending on TikTok usually takes a week or two or maybe even longer to eventually migrate and make its way over to Instagram Reels. I do think that length is shortening, by the way, and I don't know that it's as big of a deal, but like 63 is what I said here. 63% of Gen Z followed one or more meme accounts in the past 12 months. Memes matter. And 57% of Generation Z agree that they like it when brands that they follow participate in memes. So if there's a trend out there that you're seeing, find a way to weave it in and integrate it into your church. And it doesn't even have to just only be silly. The meme itself can be silly, but the basis for it can be serious, can be spiritual. It can be like, I'm trying to think of one. There's this meme right now, and this is going to date this podcast because by the time it comes out, it's not going to be, popular anymore. But there's this meme right now of this kid going, "One kiss is all it takes," and he's dancing. And it's like a CapCut thing, right? Like CapCut is a free app that you can use that you can just put templates into and then export those out to TikTok, post it on TikTok, and then download those off TikTok and post them everywhere else, okay? So anyway, this kid's dancing. I think he's got like a Burger King shirt on, and it's like really bad green screen, and he's like, "One kiss is all it takes," and then he gets angry, and he like throws his headset down, all right? And so all it is it's like you're saying like something good, and then you realize the reality of it. And so that could be a meme that your church creates, right? Like, promoting for the next event, and then boom, realizing like the website link was wrong when people clicked it, okay? Or it could be spiritual, right? Like thinking that happiness is going to give me all I ever want, and then you like put a Bible verse, right? Like, actually scratch that. Following the standard Disney princess script and thinking that romance is going to, satisfy the longings of my heart or something like that. You could have like a green screen or just a screenshot of like Rapunzel or something, and then boom, it cuts to Jeremiah 17:9. The heart is deceitful above all else. Who can know it? It is wicked, right? Like just something like that. That can still be a way to take a spirit, and I know that took forever to get through it. So thank you for muddling through that, because I was literally coming up with it off the top of my head. Did not prepare it, but I was just trying to show and give an example of some ones. I'm sure there are better ones out there, and as I'm muddling through it, you're thinking, bro, just spit it out. We can know it. You have no idea. When you're behind a mic or behind a camera, there's a lot more pressure than you'd think. But anyway, all that to be said, I digress. Use those memes to either just be funny and silly, because it's okay to be funny and silly as a church, to show your sense of humor, and or use those memes that are incredibly relevant and incredibly popular right now to convey spiritual truths. That is also a thing that can happen, right? It's not out of the realm of possibility. All right, continuing on in this, as YouTube defined it, multi-format creativity, 59% of Generation Z agree that they use short-form video apps to discover things that they can then watch longer versions of. So again, I think another goldmine for churches. You can post clips of your sermon, and then they can watch longer versions of it. Hybrid creators, this is a quote from the YouTube thing. Again, they used my word, not me using their word. No, I'm just kidding. But hybrid creators are comfortable working across different mediums, and then they use those to their advantage. Again, in that report, if you download it and check it out, they do have a screenshot there of Mr. Beast, and he's on Twitch, but he does other stuff, right? So they're saying like he uses platforms like Twitch, and so he's using multiple different platforms and streaming things and whatever, all to his advantage. All right, what is the third trend that they observed? It's called response creativity. Now check this one out. This one I have my least defined thoughts on for the implications for the church, but check out the reality of the space and landscape that we're living in. 90% of Generation Z have watched a video that have helped them feel like they were in a different place. They described it as like the aesthetic vibe. Meanwhile, 83% of Generation Z have used YouTube to watch some sort of soothing content that helps them relax. So think like a beach scene, right, with waves kind of like crashing in or whatever. 69% of Generation Z agree that they often find themselves returning to creators or content that feel comforting to them. 82% of Generation Z have used YouTube to watch content in order to help feel nostalgic, and crazy, 53% use YouTube to watch something that is not necessarily an aesthetic vibe, but of a horror vibe, okay? So all that is meaning is there are long-form videos out there, and obviously YouTube produced this, so they're pushing this towards creators. So they're caring about watch time, which promotes ads, which gives them and the creators more revenue. And the longer the watch time, the more the revenue, all these things. So you can do like long 8-hour like ocean scene things, right? Where like the beach is crashing. that's going to play amazing to YouTube. I don't know what or if the implications are for that, but I think this is a response to the anxiety and the prevalence of mental health in our culture, and Generation Z seeking answers to at least calm the God-given alarm system of anxiety through some of these aesthetic vibes or horror vibes, even to feel differently, to look differently, to act, and interact with the world differently. So let's summarize it. The future of creativity, as YouTube Trends, the Culture Report put it, it exists in dialogue. The future of creativity exists in dialogue with digital communities. Listen to that. The future exists in dialogue with digital communities. I know, pastor, I know, church leader, I know, church marketing communications person. We don't love hearing that. We don't. We know the importance and value of in-person, but the future exists with digital communities. What does that mean for us as churches? I don't entirely know, but I do know that the old way of doing it is only going to serve us for a time. All right. And we can continue to ride on the coattails of the preferences of the classic generation, the boomer generation, Gen X generation, and even millennials. But eventually this generation is going to wash in through, and this is going to be what they at least grew up with. And if we're continually pushing and promoting in person, and they're finding their true identity, friendship, fandom, whatever, through digital communities, there's a breakdown there. And so at least if we from the in-person find a way to enter into hybrid where some digital community can exist, that's going to at least not feel foreign to Generation Z, who's getting a lot of that online. I mean, just that right there, they wrote that. And that to me was like a mic drop, moment for me. Another conclusion they had 3 conclusions. Fluidly spread access of format types. All right, so there are all kinds of different formats. Use as many of them as you can. That's what they're trying to say to creators. Use as many of them as you can. Youth pastor, use as many of these as you can. What about Twitch? What about YouTube? What about a long form podcast? What about short form video? What about a Discord channel? What about fill in the blank? Right? There's all kinds of different ways, but use those to your advantage. They're used to using them in the real world. So there's not a large growing process that needs to take place if they adopt the app or whatever and start using it. Last thing, respond directly to the needs of your audience. This makes sense. We get this as pastors, and that's, talking about the response creativity, the aesthetic vibe, the horror vibe, all those types of things. Check this out. 78% of people say they use YouTube because it serves them with content that's personally relevant to them. What is the best way to forge relationships in the future? Digitally, they say through communities, through different formats, and through appealing to moods. All right, so let's wrap this up as promised at the top of the video. What does this mean for your church? We sprinkled a lot of these thoughts throughout. Let me just kind of summarize. Church thoughts. Number one, we live in a super fan community, so we have an opportunity to help create super fans. Not necessarily of us, but we can use our personalities. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And look around and talk to anyone who goes to a church. Like maybe even do this. Do a little bit of market research of people that don't go to your church and say, why do you go to the church you go to? 9 times out of 10, their response starts with, well, I really like the pastor's preaching. That's the main element of churches, at least in the purview of people. I think church is far more robust than that, or at least it should be, but most people equate it to, do I like the preaching? Yes or no? That's the question that they're answering. And so there is an element of people choosing the pastor. There just is, okay? And so create super fans of our church community, of the gospel. And right, we talked about this, super fans, often the entertainment is the piece of it, but the fandom around it. So our church can help interpret the things that are like relevant to our culture now. Like, how can we help interpret things that are relevant to our culture now? We should be doing this in our talks anyway, in our sermons, so we can then use that as a springboard of duplication of content with short form video and all that type of stuff. Multi-format, meme it up, find different ways, check out different avenues. Listen, if you're a senior leader or a church communications person, do yourself a favor, walk over to the youth pastor and say, what are the kids talking about these days? And maybe your youth pastor even has some ideas of ways that that the church could integrate some of the things that they're used to. Not because it's going to be necessarily relevant to your top donor, biggest giver, rich estate owner, billionaire, boomer guy, but because the wide array of people that are going to be entering your church in the years to come, this is what they're used to. This is what they've been navigating through. And then finally, I don't know, but would it be weird for churches to create this type of like mood content? Is there a market for that? Does it help fulfill your mission? I don't know. That one right there, I didn't know what to do with. But it's at least good to know, and it's at least interesting to observe. And I don't know, man, try it, right? Like, what is your YouTube strategy if you have the bandwidth, the means to do it? Like, what would it hurt if you dropped, an aesthetic vibe? Like, what if you created something like that, and then you pumped it out and you say, hey, use this to help you study for finals week, to your teenagers or your college students? Like, I don't know. Would that be beneficial? Would that be helpful? I don't know. What's the goal, right? Like, if the goal of social is to help people to just become aware and then low level connect with us by subscribing or whatever, like, yeah, maybe, right? Maybe it could be. But I don't know. Is there a market for that for churches? I haven't completely wrapped my brain around that. What I would do with that, what you should do with that. But it's at least something just like, hey, toss it out there and think about it. Maybe there's another way to interact with that. But I think it's all worth noting, and all super interesting, super fascinating. Well, hey, I am just absolutely thrilled that you stuck around to the end. Thanks for hanging out with us today. If you have not yet, I want to encourage you to go check out our Have I Already Ruined My TikTok account, a complete guide to posting TikToks from scratch. And I want to let you know, here's why I made this. I have a boss. I think he's 53, maybe just turned 54. He's still in youth ministry, so we're both in youth ministry, and he wants to do all this. He wants to speak the native tongue of Generation Z. And so I told him, well, then we need to get on TikTok. He's like, I know, I'm not well versed in it. And I said, okay, well, let me make you a guide for it. And so I made this guide for him to help simplify it. So it is for a beginner, but it goes through just about every feature that there is on TikTok. And if it doesn't, it's because I somehow didn't know how to get to it. But I literally tried to click every single button that I could find on there, explore it for you so that you can then take it. And if you are starting one from scratch, you can hand this to someone and say, here is how you do it. Talks you all the different ways, setting up a business account, staying on a free use account, like all the different things. It was beneficial to me in my context. So if that's beneficial to you in your context, check out the link in the show notes or head to hybridministry.xyz and click on the blog tab and you can get your free copy right there. And as a bonus, we'll throw in the free social media checklist as well. If you subscribe there to our email newsletter, that's how you're going to get it. So both of those things free in your inbox if you subscribe. Again, so thrilled that you're here. Hey, if you found this episode interesting or helpful, do me a favor, drop a review, give us a share, give us a subscribe. The more you do that, the more it helps get our message out there and into the hands of more people, more pastors, and more people who are trying to change the world through the means of digital and hybrid ministry. Until next time, we'll talk with you. Stay hybrid.